These baby goldfish are 2 weeks old now, and at this stage they finally begin to actually look like fish. If you've raised your baby fish to this point, you've passed the point of where many people fail. And in today's video, I'm going to go over how to care for a baby goldfish at this stage. The main topics I'm going to cover are 1, feeding, how often do you feed them? What can you feed them? What are some things you can do to make sure they're always well fed? And then 2, I'm also going to cover tank maintenance. So that's just basically water changes, cleaning the filters and stuff like that. I'm going to start with feeding. What do I feed baby goldfish? I feed them freshly hatched baby brine shrimp, and if you've watched my videos, you've heard me say this 1,000 times, but this is a very high protein option. It's going to have basically all the nutrients and things they need to grow off initially when they're young like this. The way I get these brine shrimp is I hatch the eggs myself in this brine shrimp hatchery. You can look at my past videos to see how I construct this and how I hatch the brine shrimp. And basically, after I have this, I just separate the brine shrimp out from the hatched eggs in this little 2-stage filter thing I have. And then I use a pipette and I suck those live brine shrimp out and I put them directly in the tank. Now, every time I do this, I do have leftovers. And I just take these leftover brine shrimp and I put them in a little old bloodworm tray and I freeze them. And this I can use to feed later. And, it is better to have the brine shrimp be live because when they move around, it stimulates the fish to go and eat them. But, frozen, freshly frozen is honestly just about as good. And when I want to feed them these cubes, I just take them out of the freezer, I pop them out of the tray, and I just drop them in the tank. They'll melt and they'll fall to the ground, and they'll have food they can munch on for a good couple hours or so. Now, how often should you be feeding these brine shrimp to the fish, alive or frozen? Well, you should not do it more than once a day. Joking! Of course I'm joking. You want to be having brine shrimp in there every second of every day as much as you can. If there is not brine shrimp in the tank, put brine shrimp in there. That is my advice for feeding. Always have food available. But Mr. Luke, won't that spoil the water quality? So much feeding, so much ammonia production? Yes it will, and we'll go into that later in the video. So feed them those brine shrimp, and while you're waiting for your next batch of brine shrimp to be ready, feed them those frozen brine shrimp, and on top of that, something I like to do is I like to have a very strong, bright light on the tank that I leave on for as long as possible during the day. And what this does is it grows a nice thick layer of algae all over the ground. So the little intermediary moments, you go to church, you're not with your fish for a couple hours, and there's nothing to munch on, boom, now there's algae to munch on. There's still a food source. But Mr. Luke, why are you so adamant about always having a food source in the tank? Well, when baby goldfish are at this stage, as much as you feed them is as much as they'll grow. Okay, their metabolism is so fast, you provide the protein, you provide the food, they will soak that up and they will grow faster. But that sounds like a lot of work. Do I really want to do all that work? Well, maybe you don't. And in that case, you should just go and pre-order a Tubby Toby plushie. A Tubby Toby plushie does not require water changes. It does not require feeding. It does not require filter maintenance. It doesn't even require a tank. You can just shove this in your closet. You can shove it in your drawer. You can shove it in your pants. Shove it wherever. The Tubby Toby plushie requires no maintenance, and it's available for pre-order now. Ships in June. Linked in the description. Go check it out. Moving on, you now know how to feed them. You know how often to feed them and how it's important to always have food available. But as you were probably thinking, if there's always food available and there's always munching, that means there's always poop that's being produced. And with so many little fish like this, that's going to be a lot of poop and the water quality is going to get bad very quickly, which is true, which is why you basically want to do a water change on this tank every single day. I've explained how I do water changes on this tank in the past, but I'll do it again. So you want to get some low power pumps. You don't want it to be a very high power pump or those babies will get sucked against it. And you want to put a mesh net over it. So when you go and you buy filter media, you can probably buy mesh nets also. Just get one of those mesh nets and zip it up over the pump. And then just pump it out into a dumping tub or into a bucket that after that bucket fills up, you go and dump somewhere else. And this is basically how I empty the tank. And the way I fill it up is about the same way as I fill up any other goldfish tank. You want to make sure that the new water coming in is around the same temperature as the water that was already in there. You don't want to shock the fish. But what is that temperature? What temperature do you keep the water at? I say anywhere from 78 degrees Fahrenheit to 82, 83 degrees Fahrenheit is a good optimal range to keep the fish at. This is going to be nice and warm, so it's going to promote a fast metabolism and fast growth, but it's not going to be too hot where it might begin to get a little stressful for the babies. Next, I want to go over filtration. So if you're going to have a filter on your baby tank, and actually there are some breeders out there that have no filter. All they do is they aerate their tank. Because they are changing the water every single day, Honestly, sometimes you don't even need a filter, but I do like to have a filter because I want to keep those ammonia levels down as low as I can between water changes. And the filter I have on there is a sponge filter, and this is probably going to be the only filter option you can have for babies that are this small. If you use a canister filter, a hang-on back filter, a submersible filter, all those things are going to be having a pump that moves water and sucks up water, and that's just going to chop up your baby goldfish when you have that in the tank. So you want to have one of these air-powered filters, like a sponge filter or another filter that moves media using an air pump. Now I'm going to talk about culling the baby goldfish. Now I'm not going to go into too much detail on this because I'm going to be doing a separate video or separate shorter videos on how I cull and basically choose which goldfish to not raise to a larger size. Now, if I'm not raising them to a larger size, what am I doing with them? I am humanely euthanizing them. And if you've been looking at these fish, you probably noticed a lot of them have dorsal fins or a lot of dorsal spikes. And these are ranchu goldfish. Those are not supposed to have dorsal fins. And there are just so many in this batch that do. So I've decided, like, for any of them that I see have a full, complete, nice looking dorsal fin, I am going to be keeping those for now. But the ones that have the spikes and the misplaced dorsal fins that don't look that good, I will be culling those off. And of course, the ones that are smooth backed like ranchus should be with no dorsal at all, I'm going to be keeping those as well. So I'm going to be sorting these guys out, keeping only the full nice dorsal finned ones and the fully smooth back ones. All those little shark chews with the little random spikes and stuff, I will be culling those off. Also, one last important thing to note, make sure you keep the water height of the tank honestly no more than 12 inches at this stage. You want to keep the water pretty shallow, and this is because it helps them develop their swimming correctly. If it's very deep, it's hard for them to go to the top because, it's a long way to swim up to gulp air to help, fill up that swim bladder. And also, it's a lot of pressure. If you have a very high water height, it's very deep pressure, and it's going to be kind of hard on these delicate little babies. And that's about all I have to say for this video. That's about all the important things to note when raising baby goldfish at this stage. And you're thinking, well, if that's all the things you have to say, that means the video is coming to an end, and we're only around the 7-minute mark. Why is the video 8 minutes long? Well, I'm just going to put in a bunch of clips of fish swimming to make this video 8 minutes long so I can put some mid-rolls in there so I can make a little extra money. All right, a man's trying to make a little extra money. Give him a break. Thank you very much for watching. Luke's Goldies out.